Get ready for the super exciting Prophet Muhammad quiz challenge. You'll be answering 110 fun and challenging questions, but watch out, the timer is ticking. For each question, you'll only have 7 seconds to answer. Let's see how many you guess correctly. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our future videos. Now, let's begin. In which year was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam born? 570 CE. Where was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam born? Mecca. Who was the father of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Abdullah. What was the name of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mother? Amina radiallahu anha. Who was the first wife of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Khadija radiallahu anha. How many children did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam have? Seven. Which angel delivered the first revelation to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Jibreel alayhi salam. Where did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam receive the first revelation? Cave Hijrah. At what age did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam receive the first revelation? 40. What is the first word revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Iqra. What was the tribe of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Quraysh. Which clan did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam belong to? Banu Hashim. Who took care of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the death of his mother? His grandfather. Who was the nursemaid of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Halima Sa'diyya radiallahu anha. What was the name of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam daughter who married Ali radiallahu anhu? Fatima radiallahu anha. Which city did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrate to from Mecca? Medina. What was the migration to Medina called? Hijrah. Which mosque did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam build in Medina? Masjid al-Nabawi. Which battle was first fought by the Muslims? Battle of Badr. In which battle did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam get injured? Battle of Uhud. How many years did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam preach in Mecca? "13." What Islamic year did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam pass away? "11 after Hijrah." How many total years did he preach Islam? "23." What was the name of the treaty signed between Muslims and Quraysh? Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Which miracle involved the night journey and ascension to the heavens? Isra and Mi'raj. Where is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam buried? Medina. Who was the first male to accept Islam? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Who was the first woman to accept Islam? Khadija radiallahu anha. Who was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam best friend and the first caliph? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. What was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam profession before prophethood? Merchant. What title was given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for his honesty? Al-Amin. Who were the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sons who died young? Qasim radiallahu anh and Abdullah radiallahu anh. What was the name of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam last wife? Maymuna radiallahu anha. Which surah was revealed after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was insulted? Surah Al-Kawthar. Who helped build the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mosque in Medina? Companions. What was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam last sermon called? Farewell sermon. Which battle was fought after the conquest of Makkah? Battle of Hunayn. Who wrote the treaty of Hudaybiyah? Ali radiallahu anhu. Which Jewish tribe was expelled from Medina by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Bani Nadir. Which tribe attacked Medina during the Battle of the Trench? Quraysh. What was the farewell sermon Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called? Khutbat al-Wada'. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam use to defend the city in the Battle of the Trench? A trench. What was the miracle of the moon performed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Moon split. Which battle is known as the Battle of the Trench? Khandaq. Which Christian king respected the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Najashi. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about seeking knowledge? It is an obligation. Which of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam companions is known as a Siddiq? Abu Bakr. Who was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam adopted son? Zayd ibn Harith radiallahu anh. Who was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam note taker and wrote down the revelations? Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anh. Which companion was the first mu'adhin? Bilal ibn Rabah radiallahu anhu. What was built first in Medina by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Masjid al-Qubba. Which companion of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam led the Muslims in the first Hijrah to Abyssinia? Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Which companion financed the army of Tabuk with his wealth and generosity? Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, who was the second caliph of Islam. Umar ibn al-Khattab. What is the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam nation called? Ummah. What is the name of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam grandson who is known for his martyrdom? Hussein radiallahu anhu. How old was the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam when his mother died? Six. Who compiled the hadith collection Sahih Bukhari? Imam Bukhari. Who was the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam first male child? Qasim radiallahu anhu. How many children did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam have with Khadija radiallahu anha? Six. What did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam use for brushing teeth? Miswak. Which wife of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was known for her knowledge and narrated many? Aisha radiallahu anha. Which two tribes were part of the treaty of Hudaybiyah? Quraysh and Muslims. Which surah warns the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam not to neglect the orphan? Surah Ad-Duha. What did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam do with those who wronged him after the conquest? Forgave most. What did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam destroy and remove during the conquest of Makkah? Idols in the Kaaba. Which enemy of Islam accepted Islam after the conquest of Mecca? Ikrimah ibn Abu Jahl. Who did the Prophet ﷺ say would be the closest to him in paradise? Those with good character. Who was martyred in the Battle of Uhud defending the Prophet ﷺ? Hamza radiallahu anhu. Which Prophet did Muhammad ﷺ meet in the first heaven during Mi'raj? Adam alayhi salam. Who was the Prophet ﷺ foster brother? Abu Sufyan ibn Harith. What was the Prophet ﷺ mount during Isra and Mi'raj? Buraq. Which tribe was responsible for the rebuilding of the Kaaba before Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was born? Quraysh. Who placed the black stone in the Kaaba during the rebuilding? The Prophet ﷺ. Which of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ uncles supported him but did not accept Islam before death? Abu Talib radiallahu anhu. Which was the last battle Prophet Muhammad ﷺ fought before his death? Battle of Hunayn. Which companion called the adhan first? Bilal radiallahu anhu. Which surah mentions the Prophet ﷺ elevated status? Surah Al-Inshirah. To whom did Khadija radiallahu anha take the Prophet ﷺ after the revelation? Warqa ibn Nawfal radiallahu anhu. Who was the Prophet ﷺ last male child? Ibrahim radiallahu anhu. Which of these animals is famously known to have helped protect the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ during the Hijrah? Spider. What animal did the Prophet ﷺ ride during the Hijrah? Camel. What was the name of the Prophet ﷺ camel during Hijrah? Qaswa. What was the name of the Prophet ﷺ eldest daughter? Zainab radiallahu anha. What is the name of the Prophet ﷺ grandfather? Abdul Muttalib. Who accompanied the Prophet ﷺ in the cave during Hijrah? Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. Where was Prophet Muhammad ﷺ when the revelation of Surah Al-Alaq occurred? Cave Hijrah. What is the name of the cave they hid in during Hijrah? Cave Thawr. What was the name of the Christian monk who recognized the Prophet's signs? Buhayra. Which surah is entirely about the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Surah Muhammad. What was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam reaction to those who harmed him? Forgave them. How many times is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned by name in the Quran? Four. What color did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prefer in clothing? White. What is the name of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam seal of prophethood? Khitam al-Nubuwah. Who was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam companion that served him for 10 years? Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anh. What was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam attitude toward animals? He loved and cared for them. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about smiling? It's charity. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about the strong person? One who controls anger. What surah was revealed near the Prophet ﷺ death? Surah Al-Nasr. Which son of the Prophet ﷺ was born in Medina? Ibrahim. Which king tore the Prophet ﷺ letter and was cursed? Chosroes. Which day did the Prophet ﷺ fast most often apart from Ramadan? Monday and Thursday. Who was the mother of the Prophet ﷺ son Ibrahim? Maria al-Qibtiyya radiallahu anha. Who led the Muslims in prayer when the Prophet ﷺ was ill? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. How long did the Prophet ﷺ live in Medina after Hijrah? "10 years. Where is the Prophet ﷺ grave located? Masjid al-Nabawi. What is the meaning of Muhammad? The praised one. Which day did the Prophet ﷺ pass away? Monday. Which surah refers to the Prophet ﷺ as a mercy to the worlds? Surah Al-Anbiya. What was the Prophet ﷺ main message? Worship one God. How many did you get right? Comment down below and make sure to like and subscribe. Assalamu alaykum.